The rain fell hard over Cleveland that night, cold, angry, and endless. Inside the locker room, the floor was slick with mud, sweat, and something heavier resentment. Marion Motley sat with his jersey half torn, his knuckles raw, while a teammate muttered a word he'd heard his whole life, but never on a professional sideline. The coach didn't look up. No one did. The silence was louder than the storm. This was 1948, a league on the rise, an America desperate for heroes, but only certain heroes were allowed. Four black men had broken the NFL's unofficial color barrier that year, but the league didn't celebrate them. No highlight reels, no headlines, just whispers. They played through hate, through broken bones, through accidental late hits, because quitting wasn't an option. They made history every Sunday, and the league erased it every Monday. The NFL didn't need violence to control its image, it used silence. And that silence became the most powerful weapon in sports. Because if America ever learned who these men really were, the game would never look the same again. The NFL didn't start with cheering crowds and billion-dollar TV deals. It started with silence, strategic, deliberate silence. By the early 1930s, black players had already proven they belonged. Men like Fritz Pollard and Bobby Marshall weren't just athletes, they were pioneers. Pollard even coached an NFL team long before the league admitted a black man could lead. But as the Great Depression deepened and racial tension spread, team owners made an unspoken agreement. No one signed another black player. No memos, no statements, just a quiet understanding that football would stay white. For 12 years, from 1933 to 1946, the NFL erased an entire generation of black talent. Newspapers didn't ask why, broadcasters didn't mention it. America looked away. While Jackie Robinson was still in college, the NFL had already locked its own color line in place. Then, after World War II, pressure began to build. The world had seen what hate could do, and integration became harder to deny. When the Rams signed Kenny Washington and Woody Strode, the league acted as if it had done something noble. But make no mistake, it wasn't a gesture of progress, it was survival. The city of Los Angeles had threatened to pull the team's access to the Coliseum unless they integrated. The NFL didn't evolve, it was forced. And when Washington and Strode walked onto that field in 1946, no press conference celebrated them, no cameras followed. They played under threat, under jeers, under silence. The owners didn't have to stay quiet. The message was already clear. You're allowed to play, but not to exist. But the silence wouldn't last forever, because within 2 years in Cleveland, two men would take the field and expose just how fragile that illusion of control really was. Cleveland, 1948. The locker room buzzed with the smell of sweat, cigar smoke, and cheap cologne. Paul Brown's Cleveland Browns were the powerhouse of the all new America Football Conference, disciplined, ruthless, unbeatable. And at the heart of it were two men who shouldn't have been there at all: Marion Motley and Bill Willis. Motley was a freight train in shoulder pads, 238 pounds of speed and fury. He didn't just run through defenses, he humiliated them. Willis, smaller but sharper, was a defensive tackle who anticipated plays before the ball even moved. Together, they turned Cleveland into a nightmare for anyone foolish enough to line up across from them. But their greatness came at a price. In the stands, fans shouted things that never made it into the newspapers. Opposing players took cheap shots that left teeth on the turf. Officials swallowed their whistles. And when the team traveled, hotels suddenly lost their reservations. Inside the locker room, the tension was constant. Some teammates had their backs, others wouldn't meet their eyes. Motley later said he got tired of hearing what I couldn't do, even after he'd already done it. They won titles, shattered records, and still found themselves left out of press photos. When reporters listed team leaders, their names quietly vanished. Their faces rarely made programs or ticket stubs. The NFL had integrated, but only on paper. Motley and Willis didn't just break the color barrier, they lived inside the storm that came after it. They proved that talent could force its way onto the field, But acceptance couldn't be measured in yards or touchdowns. And the more they won, the louder the silence around them grew. Because to acknowledge them publicly would mean admitting something the league wasn't ready to face, that black men weren't just part of the game, they were the game. But in 1950, that silence would come dangerously close to shattering. A single season and one brutal game would expose how far the NFL would go to protect its image. It was cold that December afternoon in 1950, the kind of Midwestern chill that cuts through pads and pride. The Cleveland Browns were set to face the Washington Redskins, a name that carried its own cruel irony. Washington was the last team in pro football without a single black player. Their owner, George Preston Marshall, made sure of it. He called it tradition. Everyone else called it what it was: racism wrapped in money. Marion Motley stood in the tunnel, steam rising from his breath, the roar of 40,000 fans above. He knew what this game meant. The Browns were champions of the newly merged NFL, and Washington wanted to prove a point that a white team could humble the integrated Browns. But from the opening whistle, Motley and Willis turned that field into their own statement. Motley rushed for over 100 yards, dragging defenders who cursed him with every tackle. Willis tore through Washington's line like it was paper. By halftime, Cleveland led by 4 touchdowns. Reporters sat stunned. Fans who'd once doubted integration couldn't deny what they saw. The final score, 35 to 10, wasn't just a victory, it was humiliation, and it televised across the country. The game shattered myths. It forced America to confront the lie that black players didn't belong. But the NFL didn't promote the footage. No NFL highlight reels, no commemorative articles. Within weeks, the game disappeared from archives, quietly edited out of the league's story. That night, in smoky hotel bars and press boxes, some said football had changed forever. But in boardrooms, the men who ran the league whispered something different. We can't let this get too big. Because for the first time, the world had seen what the NFL was trying to hide, and the truth was stronger than the silence. The 1950s were sold to America as the golden age of football: new stadiums, television contracts, sold out Sundays. The NFL had finally gone mainstream. The game looked clean, heroic, patriotic. But behind the glossy black and white broadcast and marching band anthems, the league was still playing defense, not against rival teams, but against truth. After the 1950 championship run, Marion Motley and Bill Willis were heroes to fans in Cleveland and symbols to black America. But to league executives, they were a problem that had to be contained. The NFL couldn't openly ban black players again, but it could control the narrative. Press photos began cropping them out. Broadcasters were told to keep the focus on team spirit. The word integration disappeared from scripts. Motley was forced into early retirement just a few years later. Willis, too. No injury reports, no farewell tour, just silence. The same silence that had shadowed them from the beginning. And as television exploded across the nation, new stars emerged. All white, all marketable. America's game was being rewritten in real time. The league's message was subtle but powerful. This isn't about race, it's about the right image. But everyone who lived it knew better. Black players were still told to stay quiet, to fit in, to be grateful. Those who didn't were benched, traded, or forgotten. Motley once told a reporter, "I didn't quit football. Football quit me." That single line summed up the era perfectly: progress without equality, inclusion without respect. The NFL's silence wasn't just a cover up, it was policy, a quiet code enforced through contracts, press rooms, and television lenses. But by the 1960s, that silence was cracking. A new generation of players was coming, and they weren't interested in staying quiet. One of them would be a running back from Syracuse whose name would shake the entire foundation of the league. By the time Jim Brown entered the league in 1957, the silence that had buried the pioneers before him was already cracking, but not broken. The NFL had been forced to integrate, but not to confront what that actually meant. For the first time, a black man wasn't just playing football, he was redefining it. Brown didn't ease into the spotlight, he tore it away. From his first snap, He looked like something out of mythology. 230 pounds of controlled fury, faster than linebackers, stronger than linemen, and smarter than anyone who tried to stop him. Every yard he gained was a challenge, not just to defenders, but to the system that said he should stay in his place. The fans couldn't get enough. The league couldn't look away. And the press, which once ignored black excellence, suddenly had to cover it. Though never without a reminder of his temper, his attitude, his ego. Jim Brown wasn't supposed to lead. He wasn't supposed to speak his mind, but he did both, loudly, unapologetically, and with a precision that made owners nervous. He refused to play the role the NFL had written for its black stars. He wouldn't smile on cue or thank anyone for allowing him to exist in their game. When he spoke about race, he didn't plead, he declared. They'll remember me, he once said, when they stop pretending I was ever just an athlete. By the early 1960s, Jim Brown had become more than a running back. He was a cultural earthquake, the living embodiment of everything the league had tried to silence for decades. Where Motley and Willis had been forced to play through hatred, Brown confronted it on television, in boardrooms, and in America's living rooms. And just when the NFL thought it could contain him, Brown made the one move the league never saw coming. He walked away. Not because he had to, because he could. That moment, the greatest player alive turning his back on the game would finish what the forgotten pioneers had started. History remembers the cheers, it forgets the silence. But the silence has always told the real story. From Fritz Pollard and Woody Strode, to Marion Motley and Marlon Briscoe, to Jim Brown himself, every generation of black player inherited the same unspoken challenge: be extraordinary and be erased anyway. They weren't fighting for endorsement deals or highlight reels. They were fighting to exist in a league that wanted their talent but not their truth. When Jim Brown walked away from football in 1966, he didn't just retire. He detonated the myth that the NFL owned its stars. His decision forced the league to look in the mirror. For decades, it had controlled the narrative through omission, through polite smiles, through silence. But now, the silence was breaking. Brown's exit cracked open a door that others would walk through. Men like Doug Williams, Warren Moon, Colin Kaepernick, and countless others would carry echoes of those early battles. They would challenge the same unspoken rules, just dressed in modern suits and polished press conferences. The NFL likes to call itself America's game. Maybe that's true, because America, too, has a history of praising its pioneers only after pretending they never existed. Today, when the league posts its Black History Month tributes, when it honors the firsts, there's a bitter irony baked into every montage. Those men, the ones who played through hate, who were benched for being brilliant, who died without medals or headlines, built the foundation that billion-dollar franchises now stand on. They never got their farewell parades. They never got their names etched in the stories we teach our kids. But their legacy didn't vanish. It's written in every end zone, every Sunday anthem, every rookie who stands tall, because someone before him refused to kneel in silence. And the fact that we're telling their stories now means the silence finally lost. The stadium is empty now. The roar long faded, the lights cold. The field scarred with footprints that history almost forgot. Somewhere in that silence, you can still hear them. The men who played when no one cheered for them, who carried more than the ball on their shoulders. They played for something the box score could never measure: dignity. They played through the kind of hate that could break a man and still found a way to make it look beautiful. And though the NFL tried to bury their names beneath decades of highlight reels and halftime shows, the truth has a way of surviving. Because every modern superstar standing tall in front of today's camera is walking on ground paved by men who never got to speak. When you hear the word legacy, remember this: it isn't written in trophies or contracts, it's written in courage, and sometimes in silence. If you remember this era or lived through the glory days, subscribe to Old School Sundays for more untold legends of the game. Because in football, like in America, the stories that matter most are the ones they tried hardest to erase. The whistle's blown, the lights are out, but their names still echo.